I travel for work a lot. I'm not rich, but my company pays for my accommodations, and I usually book Airbnbs instead of hotels because I like the home feeling. This story happened in late 2019, just before the pandemic, when I was assigned to a 3-week project in a small town in Oregon. The Airbnb looked perfect in the photos. A cozy 1-bedroom studio, minimalist furniture, wood floors, and soft white lighting. The host, Amy, had 100 positive reviews. Nothing seemed off. When I arrived, the place matched the pictures almost exactly. Clean, quiet, safe. But there was one thing that wasn't in the photos: a closet door behind the bed. It was small, narrow, and sealed with a padlock. I assumed it was a supply closet that the owner didn't want guests accessing, so I ignored it. The first night was peaceful, but the second night I woke up at 3:17 a.m. to a faint clicking noise. It was coming from behind the bed. Click, click, click. It sounded like metal tapping wood, slow, deliberate. I turned on my phone flashlight and looked toward the closet, but the sound stopped immediately. I forced myself to believe it was pipes, or maybe the radiator. I fell back asleep. The next day, curiosity got the better of me. I messaged the host. "Hey, just wondering, what's in the locked closet behind the bed?" She replied an hour later. "Just cleaning supplies and some old decorations. Please don't worry about it." Her tone felt overly cheerful. I brushed it off. That night, the same thing happened. 3 a.m., clicking noises. But this time, the bed moved slightly. Not shaking, just shifting, like someone was pressing against it from the other side of the wall. I checked the lock. It was still sealed. The next morning, I noticed small scratches on the wood floor directly under the door, like it had been pushed inward repeatedly. On the 4th night, I set up my phone to record a time-lapse video, facing the closet while I slept. I didn't review the footage until morning. What I saw made my stomach twist. At 3:14 a.m., the closet door shuddered. The padlock didn't open, but the door itself flexed, just slightly. You could see the shadows of 2 feet under the gap, bare feet. They moved away after a few seconds. I froze. The logical part of me screamed that it must be a trick of the light or a reflection. But I checked. There was no possible way to cast shadows under that door unless someone was on the other side. I called Airbnb customer support, shaking, explaining that I suspected someone might be living in the unit. They promised to contact the host and told me to leave immediately. I grabbed my bags, but before walking out, I heard something that still gives me chills. A voice whispered from behind the closet door. "Don't tell her I'm here." I ran. I didn't even lock the door behind me. Later, I received an email from Airbnb support confirming that the host was permanently banned. They never told me exactly what they found, but one of the reps hinted that the host wasn't the only person with access to that property. I still travel for work. But now, before booking an Airbnb, I read every review and never sleep with my bed against a locked door again. A few years ago, my girlfriend and I booked an Airbnb for a weekend getaway in Savannah, Georgia. One of those historic old-town apartments with creaky wood floors, exposed brick walls, and antique furniture. It was small but beautiful, the kind of place that feels alive with history. The listing said it was once part of a 19th century boarding house. The photos showed a huge gilded mirror leaning against the wall opposite the bed. Elegant, vintage, maybe even valuable. It looked like something from an old southern mansion. When we checked in, the host had left us a bottle of wine and a handwritten note. "Welcome. Please don't move the mirror. It's very old and fragile." We laughed about it, thinking it was just a warning about antiques. But something about that mirror made me uncomfortable from the start. It wasn't just the way it dominated the room. It was how cold it felt around it. Like the air shifted when you stood near it. The first night was uneventful. We explored the city, came back around 11 p.m., and went straight to bed. Around 2 in the morning, I woke up to a faint metallic creaking noise, like someone slowly shifting a heavy object. I looked toward the mirror. and my heart skipped. It wasn't standing upright anymore. It was tilted slightly forward, as if someone had pulled it toward the bed. My girlfriend was asleep, so I whispered her name and pointed. When she sat up and saw it, she frowned, half asleep, and said, "Maybe the floor's uneven," before lying back down. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. The next morning, I inspected the mirror. The base of it had 2 deep scratches in the wood floor that weren't visible when we arrived, like it had been dragged. I pushed it gently back into place, took a photo of it, and compared it to the listing photo. The scratches weren't there originally. We spent the day exploring, trying not to think about it. When we returned that night, I noticed the air in the room was colder again. The mirror reflected only the bed and part of the ceiling, but for some reason, the reflection looked darker than the actual room. That second night I woke again at 3:11 a.m. to a sound like faint whispering. Not distinct words, more like breathy murmurs echoing off the walls. My girlfriend stirred, sensing me tense up. "Did you hear that?" I whispered. She nodded slowly, eyes fixed on the mirror. Then we both saw it, a shadow moving inside the reflection. Not on the wall behind us, inside the mirror. We froze. The shadow drifted across the reflected room and stopped right where our bed appeared. For a second, it looked like someone was standing over us, but there was no one in the room. I got up, grabbed my phone, and turned on the flashlight. The light hit the mirror directly. Nothing, just our reflections, pale and shaking. We ended up sleeping in the car that night. The next morning, we told the host what happened and asked for a refund for the second night. She seemed genuinely concerned, but said something that chilled me more than anything else. "You're not the first guests to mention that mirror. It came with the building, and I've been thinking of getting rid of it." She refunded our money immediately. A week later, out of morbid curiosity, I checked the listing again. It was still active, but the new photos no longer showed the mirror. The caption under the updated picture said, "Now newly redecorated, fresh floors and modern decor." I never asked what happened to it. But sometimes when I'm half asleep, I dream of that room. And in the dream, the mirror is still there, leaning a little closer each time. Last year, I booked an Airbnb in rural Pennsylvania for a solo weekend getaway. One of those unplug and recharge trips people post about on Instagram. The cabin was small, cozy, and completely surrounded by trees. It had no close neighbors, which at the time sounded perfect. I wanted silence. The host, Greg, seemed friendly through messages. He mentioned that the place was old but charming, and that the attic was used for storage. I didn't think much about it. The first day was exactly what I needed. I cooked, read, went for a hike, and by nightfall, the woods outside had fallen into that heavy, peaceful quiet you only get far from civilization. The only strange thing I noticed that night was the bathroom. The shower was directly beneath a small attic hatch in the ceiling. It was square, wooden, and sealed with a metal latch, probably no bigger than 2 feet across. I only noticed it because when I took a shower, a faint draft of cold air came down through it, even though it was sealed shut. The next morning, I woke up early to the sound of soft footsteps overhead. Slow, heavy, deliberate. My heart started pounding. I grabbed the small broom from the corner and called out, "Greg, is someone up there?" Silence. Then, one single creak. I checked my phone. No service. It was 7:42 a.m. I told myself it was just the house settling. I had read enough about old wood beams expanding in the cold, but deep down, it didn't sound like wood. It sounded like a person shifting their weight. I decided to message the host anyway once I got a signal. Later that day, while walking a trail, I texted him, "Hey, just wondering if there's any reason someone would be in the attic. Heard noises this morning." He replied hours later, "Nope, no one should be there. The attic's sealed. Might be raccoons. Sorry about that." Okay, raccoons. Logical enough. I let it go. That night, I took another shower. The water fogged up the bathroom mirror, the steam filling the room. That's when I noticed something odd, condensation dripping from the attic hatch. The wood was slightly darker around the edges, as if something damp was pressing against it from above. I turned off the water and stood there in silence, watching as a single droplet of water formed right in the center of the hatch and fell, plop, onto the shower floor. I didn't sleep much that night. Around 2 a.m. I woke again to soft thumping noises, a few above the bathroom, then a faint dragging sound, like something being pulled across the attic floor. Then, silence. By morning, I'd had enough. I packed my things and was about to leave when curiosity got the better of me. I pulled a chair under the bathroom hatch and used my phone's flashlight to get a better look. There were scratches around the latch, not like from animals, but like human fingernails. 5 parallel lines etched deep into the wood. That was enough for me. I grabbed my bag, got in the car, and drove straight to the nearest gas station just to get a signal. I called the host and told him what I saw. He went quiet for a long moment before saying, "I'll drive over and check it out. I'll let you know what I find." 2 days later, he messaged me back. "You did the right thing leaving. There was someone in the attic. Looks like they broke in through the roof vent, probably hiding out for days. Cops took them this morning." That text made my blood run cold. He didn't say whether it was a man or a woman. He didn't say how long they'd been there. But I think about that condensation on the wood, the slow dripping, and realize that when I was standing there, naked in the shower, someone was right above me, barely separated by an inch of wood. This happened to me and my boyfriend last summer in Arizona. We were taking a road trip across the Southwest, and after spending a few nights in cheap motels, we decided to splurge a little on an Airbnb that looked peaceful and private. The listing said, "Entire guest house, host lives in separate main house." It was a pretty setup, a small white cottage with its own driveway, surrounded by desert shrubs and long stretches of silence. The host, Peter, greeted us when we arrived. He was in his late 50s, tall, with kind eyes but a strange nervous energy. He said he lived in the big house across the property and that we'd have complete privacy. Except we didn't. It started the first night. Around 9 p.m., we were sitting on the porch when we noticed a faint glow from the bushes a few yards away. I thought maybe it was a motion light, but it was moving, like the flicker of a phone screen. When I looked closer, I saw Peter standing half-hidden behind a tree, just watching us. I called out, "Hey, everything okay?" He flinched, stepped forward a bit and said, "Just checking that the lights are working. Some guests tripped the breaker by accident." Then he turned and walked off. We brushed it off as weird but harmless. The next morning, he knocked on our door around 7 a.m. with 2 mugs of coffee. He smiled awkwardly and said, "I thought you might want some fresh brew." We thanked him, but didn't invite him in. Later that afternoon, when we came back from town, the coffee mugs were gone, and so were 2 of our energy drinks from the fridge. That night we heard soft knocking again, not at the door but on the side wall near the window. My boyfriend opened the curtain and saw Peter walking away, waving his hand like it was normal. I told him, "That's it, I'm messaging Airbnb." I sent a complaint explaining that the host kept showing up unannounced and that we didn't feel comfortable. Airbnb replied a few hours later saying they'd reach out to him. At 1:23 a.m., we woke up to the sound of the door handle turning. We both froze. Then came a soft click. The door unlocked. Peter stepped inside. He was barefoot, holding something in his hand, one of the same coffee mugs he brought earlier. "Oh, sorry," he said quickly, smiling too widely. "I thought I heard your fridge running weird. Wanted to make sure it wasn't leaking." We yelled at him to get out. My boyfriend grabbed a kitchen knife and told him we'd call the police. Peter's expression changed instantly. His smile vanished, and his voice dropped. "You don't need to do that. It's my property." He left, closing the door behind him. We locked every window, packed our bags, and spent the rest of the night sitting in the car parked down the road. At sunrise, we drove to a diner and called Airbnb's safety line. They helped us cancel the stay immediately and booked us a hotel instead. Later, Airbnb support told us they had permanently suspended Peter's listing. The next guests who booked that property had apparently found hidden cameras disguised as smoke detectors in the guest house ceiling. I think about the way he stared at us from the bushes, the early morning coffee, the quiet unlocking of the door, and realize he never saw us as guests. He saw us as his. I'm a teacher, and last spring I booked a quiet Airbnb outside St. Louis to grade finals over a long weekend. I wanted somewhere cheap, clean, and distraction-free. The listing showed a tidy one-bedroom with a small desk and a big window that looked out onto a maple tree. The photos were crisp. The host, Lance, had a row of 5-star reviews that all said the same thing. Exactly as described. Great Wi-Fi. Check-in was contactless. A keypad, a short set of instructions, and a welcome note on the kitchen counter. The place smelled faintly of lemon cleaner. There was a 2-seater couch, a little TV, and a small dining table I decided to convert into a grading station. On the shelf above the TV sat a simple black desk clock, round face, white numbers, and a glossy bezel that caught the window light. The first night was uneventful. I ordered Thai food, spread out rubrics, and worked until after midnight. Around 1 a.m., the heat kicked on with a metallic clunk, and I called it. The bed was firmer than I like, but I slept. The next morning, I noticed something odd about the clock. The face had a very faint greenish tint that didn't match the rest of the room. Not a reflection, more like glass tint. When I got closer, I saw a pinhole just above the 2. If you weren't looking for it, you'd never notice. I told myself it was a light sensor or a microphone for some smart feature. It was 2025. Everything has microphones. Still, it bothered me. I picked up the clock. It was heavier than it looked. No branding on the back. Just a rubberized panel with a tiny grill near the bottom and a slot for 2 AA batteries. I tried to open it, but the back didn't spring like normal. It felt sealed. I put it back. I didn't want to break anything and get docked. I told myself I was being paranoid, went back to grading, and tried to forget about it. That afternoon, I took a break and called my sister. While I paced the living room, I caught my reflection in the clock's glossy rim. Not a reflection exactly, more like a warped fisheye bubble. I hung up with my sister and crouched to look closer. That's when I noticed the clock wasn't quite pointing true north. It was angled just enough to face the edge of the couch and the hallway to the bedroom, the only 2 places you'd undress. A sick feeling crept up my throat. I moved the clock to the far end of the shelf so it faced the curtains. 10 minutes later, when I came back from the kitchen, the clock was pointing at the hallway again. I froze. I had not touched it. I checked the shelf. No slope. I nudged the clock a 3rd time and watched it still. Then I sat on the couch and stared at it for 2 straight minutes. Nothing. No movement. I felt ridiculous. I shook off the nerves, showered, and got ready to run to the grocery store. It wasn't until I reached the door that I remembered my laptop sitting open with student names on the screen. I turned back to close it. As I walked by, the clock ticked. Not a normal tick. A tiny mechanical whine, like a lens adjusting. I stopped mid-step. The hair on my arms rose. I set my phone in video mode, placed it on the shelf facing the clock, and left the apartment like I had before. I stood outside by the maple for 5 minutes, went back in, and checked the footage. At the 0002 mark, after the door shut, the minute hand twitched. Not forward, but backward, a millimeter. Then the clock tilted on its base, and ever so slightly rotated to face the couch. The second hand didn't match the audio tick. It was lagging by 2 seconds. The whine came right before the tilt. Every time. My mouth went dry. I opened the back panel with a butter knife. It wasn't sealed with clips. It was glued. The blade sliced the rubbery seam. Inside was not a battery bay. It was a tangle of wires, a micro SD card, and a small metal cylinder engraved with 2.8 millimeters. A lens. I dropped the knife like it burned me. I filmed the inside as proof, closed it loosely, and put the clock face down under a towel. Then I messaged the host. Hi, question. Is the living room clock a smart device with a camera? I found a lens and an SD card. Please advise. He replied in under a minute. No cameras on the property. What you found is probably just a light sensor. The cleaning crew sometimes brings their own alarm clocks for music. Safe stay. The message sounded rushed. What you found is probably... That phrase kept looping in my head. I didn't answer. Instead, I opened the Airbnb Safety Center chat and reported unapproved camera shark surveillance device. I uploaded the video and the photo of the internals. They told me to leave immediately and offered to relocate me to a hotel. They also asked me to take the device with me if I felt safe and turn it over to law enforcement. I didn't want to touch it again, but the thought of leaving it there, and whoever watched me, made my skin crawl. I pulled the micro SD with paper towels, slipped it into an envelope, and tossed the clock into a tote bag. Then I packed my things as quickly as I could. Right as I zipped my suitcase, the front door handle jiggled. I stood there, breathless. The deadbolt was on, but the handle pressed down, released, then down again. A shadow passed under the door. I grabbed my suitcase and ran to the bedroom, locked that door too, and dialed 911. Someone's trying to get in, I whispered. The handle jiggled a third time, then a knock, not loud, polite. Housekeeping, a man said. Not the host's voice. Younger, calm. I didn't answer. After a few seconds, footsteps retreated. I waited on the line with dispatch, who told me to stay put until officers arrived. They did, 3 of them, and they cleared the unit while I stood outside with my suitcase and the tote bag holding the clock. No one was inside, no sign of forced entry. The deadbolt and handle lock were intact. The officers asked me to explain the camera, so I showed them the footage and the device. One of them swore under his breath. They took the clock and SD card into evidence and asked me to forward the Airbnb support messages, which I did. Airbnb relocated me to a hotel downtown and refunded the entire stay. A safety specialist called later that evening to say the listing was suspended and under investigation. Weeks passed. I didn't expect to hear more. But I did. A detective called to follow up. The SD card had 62 files. Most were short clips triggered by motion. The earliest videos were angled at chest height by the couch. Then later, the camera's view shifted toward the bedroom hallway. In several clips, you could see guests packing, holding up clothes against themselves, moving between the bathroom and the bedroom. You couldn't see faces clearly. The lens distorted them. But you could recognize bodies. Dates stamped the bottom corner, months of them. The detective asked if I'd noticed anything else in the apartment that seemed out of place. I thought of the housekeeping voice. I thought of the host's message. Cleaning crew sometimes brings their own alarm clocks. They never told me whether it was the host or someone else. The detective said charges were pending. Airbnb sent a final note thanking me for reporting a serious policy violation. I've stayed in Airbnb since. I bring a small RF detector now, and the first thing I do is sweep the mirrors and vents. Then I take every digital clock off the shelf and point it at the wall. I used to think paranoia was the problem with traveling alone. Now I think it's the only reason I still sleep. I flew into Denver for a 3-day conference and booked an Airbnb downtown, a small brick carriage house behind a bigger Victorian. Self-check-in, keypad lock. The host, Marta, sent a cheerful message with the code and a PDF house manual. It all felt routine. By the time my Lyft dropped me off, it was after 10 p.m. The alley was narrow and slick with a thin layer of old snow. The carriage house glowed warm through frosted windows. I punched in the code, heard the deadbolt thump, and stepped into a room that smelled faintly of cumin and dish soap. 2 things registered at once. A chalkboard by the kitchenette that said, "Welcome Emily," with a little heart, and a tote bag on the dining chair that wasn't mine. I stood in the doorway, listening. The place was quiet. No luggage in the bedroom, no shoes by the door. The tote bag was empty except for a paper receipt, Whole Foods earlier that afternoon, and a pack of gum. I took a photo of the chalkboard and messaged the host. "Hi Marta, made it, thanks. Noticed a Welcome Emily board and a tote on the chair. Is someone else staying here, or is this leftover from the last guest?" Read. No reply. I locked the door from the inside, did a quick sweep, bathroom, closet, under the bed, then texted again with a few smiley faces to soften the tone. Nothing. I told myself the chalkboard was just a cute touch she forgot to erase. I moved the tote to the counter and made tea. At 11:26 p.m., someone knocked. Not loud, polite. 3 taps. I froze. Another 3 taps, a little firmer. "Hello?" a woman's voice called. "Emily, are you inside?" I said through the door. "No, sorry, you have the wrong place." A man chimed in. "We have a reservation. This address, tonight through Monday." I looked through the peephole, a couple in their late 20s with rolling suitcases and an Uber idling at the curb. The woman held up her phone, face lit blue. Even through the fisheye glass, I recognized the photos. The same couch, same patterned rug, same kitchen tile. "This is my Airbnb," I said. "I checked in an hour ago." There was a pause. Then the man read from his phone. "Check-in code should be 2468. Can you try it?" No, I said. "You need to contact your host." The woman sounded rattled rather than angry. "We did. She said she'd refresh the lock and to just try the code." "Please?" I tightened the deadbolt and chain and texted Marta again, this time in a new thread through the Airbnb app's urgent toggle. "2 people are here saying they have the same reservation, same address. Can you call me now?" Again, read. No reply. I called Airbnb support. After the hold music and script about guest safety is our priority, a rep named Jordan came on and asked me to describe the situation. I explained the chalkboard, the tote, the couple, the duplicate code. Jordan said double bookings should be impossible and asked me to remain inside and not open the door. He said he'd contact the host and elevate to safety. Outside, the Uber drove off, leaving the couple in a slow-falling, dusty snow. I listened to muffled conversation, footsteps, then quiet. I thought they'd given up. At 12:52 a.m., my lock beeped, 4 high chimes in quick succession. The keypad pulsed a dull green through the glass. The handle pressed down against the deadbolt. Whoever was outside tried again. Beep, 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 then a soft error tone. The chain rattled. "Please stop," I called. My voice shook. The man's tone was apologetic. "I'm sorry. The host said she reset the lock. She told us to try again." "Airbnb told me not to open the door," I said. "I've already contacted them." Silence. Then footsteps retreating. I watched the shadow under the door recede. The lock went quiet. I stared at the keypad for a long time. Then I noticed the back door. The house manual mentioned a private garden patio with a gate to the alley. I hadn't checked that exit. I went to the small laundry area and found a second door with another keypad. Through the frosted pane, a motion light flicked on and the snow lit up like ash. I tested the knob. Unlocked. I locked it, slid the bar, and dragged the little washer a few inches to block the door. It felt silly until it didn't. At 1:17 a.m., there was a soft clunk from the front door. Not a knock, an electronic thunk, the sound of a lock receiving a code. The deadbolt shivered. The chain went taut. The door opened an inch against it, then caught. A breath of cold air slipped in, along with a whisper. "Hi. We're not trying to scare you. We were told to come in." I called 911. The dispatcher kept me on the line while the person outside repeated the host's name and the last 4 digits of my phone number, as if that would soothe anything. "See? She gave us those digits to confirm we're legit." Footsteps paced. The lock beeped again. The chain held. The dispatcher told me officers were en route. The couple backed away, hands visible near their shoulders when the police arrived 8 minutes later. 2 officers spoke with them on the porch, while a third came around to my alley door and had me step out with my ID. They checked my Airbnb reservation, confirmed my name and dates, and called the host with the number on my reservation. Marta didn't pick up. Her voicemail was full. The officers asked the couple for their reservation. The woman showed a confirmation, but it wasn't through Airbnb. Same photos, same description, same map pin, different platform, different host name, Marina instead of Marta. The phone number they'd been texting wasn't the one on my listing. One officer sighed. "We've seen this cloned listing." The couple looked devastated, exhausted, suitcase wheels clogged with slush. The woman's eyes glassy with the kind of burn that comes after a long flight and a longer argument. The officers suggested a motel up on Colfax. The couple apologized through the door one last time. "We're sorry we scared you." I felt guilty for their bad luck and still fierce about protecting the threshold at the same time. After they left, one officer stayed to walk the unit with me. He noticed the chalkboard and the tote on the counter. "When did you arrive?" he asked. 10 o'clock. He touched the tote with a pen. Warm, like it's been carried recently. He pointed to the thermostat blinking "Hold" and to a tiny hub mounted near the router. "Smart lock bridge," he said. "If someone else has admin, they can issue codes remotely." We called Airbnb again, this time through the safety line the officer provided. Different rep, faster response. Within minutes, they moved me to a business hotel and added a safety flag to my reservation. They told me, in careful legal language, not to return to the carriage house and to leave the keypads untouched. In the morning, Marta finally messaged, "I am so sorry. My ex-co-host copied my listing months ago to another site while we were still working together. I thought I got it taken down. He still had access to the lock admin and set codes without telling me. I'm dealing with it now." Airbnb suspended the listing pending investigation and refunded me. The safety team sent a follow-up note asking for a written statement and the officer's report number. I never found out whether Marta's ex was charged or if the clone listing was removed across every site it had propagated to. What sticks with me isn't the knock or the inch of open door. It's the certainty in that couple's voices. They believed they belonged there. They had a confirmation number, a code that almost worked, and a host, someone, on the other end telling them to come in. That night in the hotel, every time the elevator dinged in the hallway or a distant door latch clicked, my body braced for a knob to turn. I sleep with the chain on now, even in places that feel safe. And when I check into an Airbnb, the first thing I ask the host is whether anyone else, co-hosts, cleaners, property managers, can issue lock codes without them. Most say no. Some hesitate before they answer. I booked the place because it said, "Entire apartment, no shared spaces." It was a work trip to Madison 3 nights, and I chose an Airbnb over the conference hotel because I wanted a kitchen and a door that didn't slam every time someone dragged a suitcase down the hall. The photos were normal: a gray couch, a little galley kitchen, a queen bed with white sheets, and a hallway with a framed map of Wisconsin. It looked like any Midwestern starter apartment. 2 details stood out when I arrived. There were 2 thermostats on the same wall in the hallway, and the listing's house rules printout on the counter had a line that said, "Please do not adjust the left thermostat." The left one was older, a beige rectangle with a plastic slider. The right one was a new smart thermostat with a color screen and my check-in name on it, like a hotel TV. I assumed the left thermostat controlled something separate, maybe the building heat, so I ignored it. The place was quiet. The host, Alyssa, messaged a friendly, "Welcome, let me know if you need anything." I unpacked, answered emails, and set my thermostat to 70. It clicked softly, the vent sighed, and warm air drifted from the register near the couch. At 1:42 a.m., I woke up cold. Not, "Oh, it's drafty" cold. The air had that dry, refrigerated bite that catches in your throat. I checked my thermostat. It still said 70, heat on. I put my palm over the vent. Ice air. I got out of bed, padded to the hallway, and saw the left thermostat slider had moved. I couldn't swear it had been at 70 before, but now it sat hard right, at 60, and the little red heat indicator was off. I slid it back to 72. In the silence that followed, I could hear the building's heartbeat, ducts pinging, a compressor somewhere humming, the old bones of the place adjusting. Warmth seeped back through the vent. I stood there a minute, watching both thermostats like a tiebreaker judge. Then I went back to bed. At 3:09 a.m., I heard footsteps in the hallway. Not outside, not the stairwell. Inside the apartment, 2 slow steps and a soft brush against the wall, like a sleeve. I sat up, listened hard, and convinced myself the sound had been the pipes. The right thermostat screen pulsed and briefly flashed, "Hold canceled by admin." The room cooled again. In the morning sunlight, everything looked harmless. Coffee, emails, a video call. Before I left for meetings, I messaged the host. "Quick Q, why are there 2 thermostats? The left one seems to override the right one at night?" She replied quickly, "Oh, the left one is for the mechanical room that shares a wall. It shouldn't affect you. Please leave it alone and only use the right thermostat. Thanks." I read it twice. Mechanical room that shares a wall. I hadn't seen any mechanical room. The only doors were the bathroom, bedroom, and a small owner's closet with a keypad, unlocked but latched. I opened it. A stacked washer, dryer, some hotel-style towels, a mop. The back wall of the closet had a large metal access panel screwed shut. A black cable snaked from it to a little white hub with blinking lights, the same brand as the right thermostat. I made a mental note to let it go. I wasn't there to sleuth an HVAC system. I left for the day. That night I got back around 10. I set my thermostat to 71, showered, and watched a show on my laptop. At 11:58, the right thermostat made a delicate chime and switched to a schedule I hadn't programmed. Eco Cool 64 Deagle, night schedule. I tapped the screen, canceled the hold, and set it back. 2 minutes later, it did it again. I canceled it again. This went on in a petty, unsettling tug of war until I physically set the thermostat to manual, no schedule. It stayed put. At 12:40 a.m., a soft thump came from inside the owner's closet. Then a murmur, a breath against metal, and the faintest scrape of a screwdriver. The hair on my neck went up so fast it hurt. I grabbed my phone, hit record on the voice memos app, and stood absolutely still in the hallway, bare feet cooling on the plank floor. The access panel in the closet flexed, barely, like someone put a palm against it from the other side. I backed away, locked the front door, and texted the host. "I'm hearing noise from the owner's closet, like someone is inside the wall. Is there building access from that side? I'm uncomfortable. Read." No reply. The scrape came again, followed by a crisp click, the sound of a latch slotting home. Then silence. My thermostat screen blinked. "Hold canceled by admin." The left thermostat's plastic slider trembled and crept down one notch as if nudged by a vibration. I called Airbnb safety. While I was on hold, the ambient sounds of the vents shifted again from heat to cold. The rep answered and asked me to describe the situation. As I finished explaining, something tapped from inside the closet, and the washer vibrated like someone had bumped it from behind. The rep told me to leave the unit and wait in my car while they contacted the host and the local support team. I took a photo of both thermostats and the closet panel, threw on shoes, and grabbed my coat. When I opened the front door, a man stood 5 feet away with a ring of keys. He was mid-40s, bearded, and wore a maintenance jacket with the building's address embroidered on it. He held up both hands like a hostage negotiator. "Hey, sorry, co-host. Alyssa sent me. We got a notification about the thermostat. It keeps going offline." He gestured vaguely toward my door like the problem was the air, then to a metal door across the hall I hadn't noticed before. "Mechanical room's here. Just need to check the zone control." My heart was pounding loud enough I could hear it in my ears.
Behind him, the metal door had a keypad smeared with paint. The owner's closet in my unit backed up to that wall. "Can you come back in the morning?" I asked, louder than I meant to. He gave a tight smile. "It'll only take a second. We've had pipes freeze."
Airbnb safety was still on the line in my pocket. I said flat, "I'm not comfortable with that." He swallowed, glanced at my door, and pulled his phone from his jacket like he was going to call someone. The screen glow lit his face. In the reflection, I watched his thumb hover, then lower. He didn't dial. He just stood there, waiting. A minute ticked by like a full minute of underwater. He finally said, "Okay," in that tone people use when they want you to hear ungrateful. He went into the mechanical room. The metal door closed with a heavy stomach drop slam. I stepped back into my place, locked the deadbolt, and braced a dining chair under the knob because it felt like something you're supposed to do in stories like this. Airbnb called me back with a relocation option, business hotel 3 blocks away. The rep asked if I felt safe retrieving my suitcase. I did. I packed as fast as I could. As I zipped the bag, the left thermostat's slider twitched again. The right thermostat flashed a name I hadn't seen. Admin, co-host, Kyle. Across the hall, the mechanical room door thudded. I heard a muffled voice and the clank of a wrench. The access panel in my closet gave one last metallic sigh. I left. I didn't look back. 2 days later, Airbnb sent a formal email. The listing was suspended for undisclosed shared utilities and access conflicts. A separate message from a safety specialist thanked me for the photos and said the co-host had been removed from the account. Alyssa messaged me from a different number and said she'd fired her building manager and that he used to live in the basement before we renovated. She added, "I'm so embarrassed. It won't happen again." I stared at the 2 thermostats in the photo roll on my phone. One modern, neatly labeled. One old, hating the light, trying to drag the temperature back to whatever was on the other side of that wall. When I book Airbnbs now, my eye goes straight to the hall photos. I look for extra doors, duplicate thermostats, and weird instructions that don't match the pictures. If a listing says entire place, I want it to mean me and only me. No co-hosts behind metal panels, no schedules I didn't set, and no shared heartbeat in the walls that knows when I'm asleep.